It was the year of the Lord 1172, and Pisa finally had the money for its bell tower. They took the gleaming white marble that was the same color of the cathedral. Where's the cathedral? Wait a second, let me check. Wrong position. That is a leaning tower in Pisa. Yes, this is the bell tower of the Church of San Michele degli Scalzi, not the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Google made me take a wrong turn somewhere. Let me get back to you when I'm finally in front of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We are finally in the right spot. That is the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
So let's get back into the story now. The year was 1173. Malaria plagued the city, but Pisa's coffers were finally full again. The cathedral was done, the baptistry was almost done, and so the plans were drawn for the final monument of the square. It was time for the bell tower.
It was August. It was sticky. And most of the workers were sick with malaria, but the first foundations of the Leaning Tower of Pisa were finally done. The first ring went up, the second ring went up, the third ring went up, and then money ran out.
Construction halted for nearly a century. It seemed like a disaster, but it was a miracle in disguise. That was let the foundations settle
and enable the tower to still be standing after 800 years.
Because there is something you need to understand. The tower didn't become leaning over time. It was born that way. Even during those first few years, workers felt the foundation shifting beneath their feet. To anyone with eyes, the building was already visibly tilting to the side.
It was a disaster, a catastrophe. The soil had been prepped, yes, but here the soil in Pisa is moist enough that no building is without till. There were thoughts about destroying what was done of the tower because the embarrassment might just about kill Pisa's government.
But they had already sunk the equivalent of millions of euros into the project, virtually the entire fortune from their Saracen war chest. The financial loss was simply too high to accept, so they made the only choice left: keep the stump and pray for a solution.
Unfortunately for them, figuring something out took almost a century.
It wasn't until 1272 that the city finally mustered the courage and the cash to return to the site. They had to. Pisa's reputation was at stake. In the 94 years the stamp had been left there for everyone to see,
they had become the joke of Tuscany. The great maritime republic of Pisa that couldn't even complete one single bell tower.
Pisa had finally had enough. It poured money from its powerful trade empire into hiring a new architect, Giovanni di Simone, the very same man who would build the Camposanto. They told him to finish the bell tower, come hell or high water.
And so Giovanni di Simone did from the third ring up until the bell tower excluded. And if you notice the tilt of the tower, you also notice that Giovanni di Simone did its utter best to actually try and make it straight again. He didn't succeed, and that's why the tower
has a distinct banana shape.
And then, when he got to the point in which he could put the bell tower, he was forced to once again stop. He realized that if he continued in that way, the tower would actually collapse.
Giovanni di Simone had done the impossible. He inherited a disaster and somehow, through sheer engineering will, forged a standing monument from a project that was destined to collapse.
Unfortunately for him, though, Pisa was about to embark in its most devastating naval defeat yet.
For decades, Pisa and Genoa had been at each other's throats, fighting for control of the sea trade. In the 13th century, things finally came to a head. On the 6th of August 1284, the two great maritime rivals finally clashed off the coast of Livorno, near the tiny islet of Meloria. On paper, Pisa thought they had the advantage. They were deploying 72 galleys, all they had, against Genoa's 63. What they didn't know, though, was that they were sailing into a trap. The Genoese admiral Benedetto Zaccaria had held back a second squadron of 30 ships. He kept them at a distance, mustered down on the horizon, invisible to the Pisan lookouts. As the Pisans were engaged in the frontal attack with the main Genoese force, those extra 30 ships swooped down on them from the side. The result was a massacre. Pisa lost everything. Over 11,000 sailors, the city's entire workforce, were dragged off in chains. The loss was so total that a dark saying spread across Tuscany: if you want to see Pisa, you must go to Genoa, because that's where the men were, rotting in prison. The money dried up, the workforce vanished, and for the third time, the tower was abandoned.
We need to wait yet another century until 1372 to finally have the Pisa Leaning Tower crowned with the bell chamber that it deserved.
The architect who finally finished it was Tommaso Pisano. He realized he couldn't just build straight up from the leaning base, the way it would topple the whole thing. So he built the bell chamber tilting north, correcting the angle one last time.
But the funny thing is that if you notice the tower from a distance, you will see that the bell chamber is actually perpendicular to the earth, which means that the bell chamber is the only part of the Leaning Tower of Pisa which is straight.
While today the Leaning Tower of Pisa is the city pride and joy, in the Middle Ages it was nothing more than a public embarrassment. It was a humiliation. It was, well, a botched job.
But the Pisans weren't about to take all the jokes lying down. So they put out a story, they put out a legend that they had done the Leaning Tower of Pisa leaning exactly in that way, because if it had been straight, it would have blocked the sun shining on the cathedral.
Now, we have no way to know if they really circulated the story back then. In any case, it was clearly just a way to soothe their bruised egos. But it makes for good storytelling at least. However, at this point, you might have realized we're missing a piece of the story.
It's interesting to note that for all actually of the Leaning Tower's history, nobody assumed paternity for that bell tower.
And let's be fair, why would they?
For centuries, we thought the architect might have been Salvi, the architect of the baptistry. But a new study in 2019 on a stone matrix found in the rubble of the tower in 1838 finally discovered that the architect was Bonanno of Pisa.
Bonanno wasn't just anyone. He was the master sculptor who created the bronze doors for the cathedral. He envisioned the tower as his next masterpiece, even carving a stone matrix to cast a plaque, putting his name on it for the world to see. But then, when the tower tilted at the third ring, his pride collapsed,
and he decided that it was better to let history forget he had ever had a hand in this project.
So the matrix was tossed aside as garbage, left to rot for centuries, until it was finally deciphered in 2019.
I know that when Bonanno of Pisa died, he died embarrassed. But I think if he could see the tower now, still standing in all its glory, maybe he would have been proud. Maybe he would have told the world far and wide that he, Bonanno of Pisa, was the architect of the Leaning Tower.
Did you know that we came very close to losing the tower entirely? If you visit the tower today, you'll immediately notice something odd. Tourists have to walk down 3 steps into a marble trench just to reach the door. The entire building seems to sit inside a sunken bowl.
Was this Bonanno's idea? Well, no.
When he designed it, the tower was supposed to stand on a majestic marble plinth. The door was meant to sit 3 steps up, not 3 steps down. But the soft soil of the city, the same one that had caused the tower to lean, had also sunk it. By the beginning of the 19th century, the base was buried 3 meters underground.
The tower had stabilized itself, but with the door sunken below street level, it resembled a tree stump growing directly out of the grass.
Even though it was finally finished, the monument looked awkward and neglected. In 1838, Pisan architect Alessandro Gherardesca decided it was time to reveal the majestic base buried for centuries. He excavated the earth to expose the marble steps, creating a basin known as the Catino.
But he made a critical error. He forgot that Pisa is practically a swamp, and all of its buildings actually swim in the mud.
When the trench immediately flooded, he pumped it out, unaware he was removing the very thing holding the tower in place.
The result?
The tower instantly lurched 20 centimeters south.
There were real fears that the tower would not live to see one more day.
For nearly a century, the city simply waited for the crash, until 1934.
It was about time to do something about it.
Benito Mussolini decided that the Leaning Tower was a stain on the reputation of the entire Italy. It needed to be straightened out.
They thought that the problem of the tower was that it leaned because the soil was too damp.
They came out with a brilliant engineering plan. Swap the muddy water with concrete.
They thought the tower would go back to being straight. It was a near apocalypse, a near catastrophe.
When they pumped the tons of concrete into the foundation, they thought it would solidify the ground and anchor the tower. Instead, the massive weight of the concrete dragged the tower down, making it lean further and further. Terrified, the regime pulled the plug. They abandoned the site immediately, and the project was never mentioned again.
It was so a problem that
at the end of the 20th century,
they had to close it down because it was not stable enough.
The solution was soil extraction. Engineers drilled beneath the high side of the foundation and carefully removed the earth. As the soil came out, the tower settled. It is now safe for at least another 200 years. And far from an embarrassment, it stands today as the city's pride and joy.
I think in the end, we can all say that the Tower of Pisa did very well for itself.